My name is Pavel Kravchenko. I am the co-founder and CEO of Distributed Lab. We're like a blockchain R&D and doing it for over 6 years. We have a partner in the UAE, in the hub, which we deliver projects, do research, and, other exciting things. And we decided to make like this webinars and conference regarding this topic, and we invite like best speakers, people who've done in their life some good stuff, know what they're talking about. So today we have the main speaker is guest Mohammed. He used to work in SAP and PwC, and he was consulting a lot of startups and doing exits. So Mohammed will tell about himself, about all these things, and we'll start. And also on the call, we have Sergey Nikolaev, the CTO of InnoHub, and we have Andre Steinberg, and CPO of Cumulus. They'll be helping me a little bit, asking some questions. So Mohammed, please, stage is yours. Please introduce yourself shortly, and we will start talking about tokenization.
All right, thank you. Thank Pavel for the introduction and for the opportunity, and welcome everybody. And Ahmad, it's good to see you again. Now I remember, it's been quite a long time. Basically, if I summarize my background and work experience is mostly in startups, helping entrepreneurs, setting up the companies and growing them. And I worked in angel funding, angel investment for a very long time. Whether I set up my own business like I did here in the UAE, or I helped and participated in many companies, and most of them were in Europe, although we did. I had the pleasure of working in different jurisdictions. I work in Latin America and in North America and Europe, Australia and Asia over a period of 15 years. And that actually part of the reason why, my work in the startups and the fact that I have lots of, let's say, wealth locked in equity with these startups that I cannot liquidate was one of the attractions with the STOs. The blockchain I started in, I think, 2014 with a small investment in a very early stage exchange. It was an experiment. And then, we did a few of these investments, smaller one to get into the market, get into the industry. And 2017 as well was a very good year. And I did participate in a few ICOs, especially from Dubai, which was a very major hub for that. So that's a quick background. And currently I founded a company that specializes in digital asset security tokens, providing consultancy. And we can elaborate more into this.
Okay, great. So Mohammed, how would you describe like the tokenization process? What's unique? How do you present it to your clients or partners or anybody else?
Yeah, so when we talk tokenization, of course, we have the different type of tokens, the utility and the security token. We focus on the security token, but not exclusively. We look at the blockchain as a technology and see how it will help the clients either improve their business. But again, our main focus is how to raise money. And the way that I present it and the way I believe that the current market for the security token, we all believe this is it's in the early stage for the industry. So there are lots of things that are not complete. When we explain it to the clients as well as the investors, we make sure that we avoid giving any misleading information. So, for example, the liquidity, everybody in the industry theoretically talking about the STO will create a liquidity into the market. It will eventually. Right now, it's very there is a shortage in the liquidity in the STO market. However, when we present it to our clients, we say it is a step improvement from a private entity. So for an investment in a private company, when you do a normal investment, whether it's a convertible note or a direct equity, you're looking at a lockup of 5-7 years, sometimes 10 years before you can exit. If you're lucky, you will do it, within 3 years or shorter. But the normal is 5 to 7 years or longer nowadays. So when we present the security token, we emphasize that it will give an option to the investor to be able to exit within a year or two. Now, doesn't mean that when the token is ready to be listed, that the liquidity will be there. So the way we present it is an improvement over the current private structure. Number two, the security token is representing an underlying asset. The asset can be defined as either an equity or a cash component in the company, like a revenue or a profit share, or an ownership, like a real estate ownership or a piece of art. And then the way our business, our work is, how do we translate that asset from the real world to the token in the blockchain, doing the legal work and the technical work to build up that link. So that's how we look into it, and it does give a better opportunity for the investor. Currently, the security token, I look at it much better from the investor's perspective. It doesn't make a big difference to the issuer, to the companies, unless if they have an angle that is, have a native usage of a token in their system.
Okay. We have the question in the chat regarding, is tokenization the same as equity? So you partially already touched that. Maybe please elaborate on this a little bit more.
Security token, most of the... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying that the jurisdiction questions we'll answer a little bit later. Yeah.
Sure. Now, the projects we are doing, like, for example, and the ones that we see in the market, the majority of them are tokenizing debt, especially bonds. So this is where most of the, in terms of volume, the majority of the tokens issuance are a representation of a debt instrument or a bond. The equity is one of the very attractive options for the creation of the tokens. So yes, equity is security token can represent an equity. So in this case, you could say it is exactly the same as an equity.
Okay. Yeah, there could be other, like if you're talking about tokenization in general, as Mohammed already said, there are different like asset classes. One of them is like a utility, which was very popular in 2017, but yeah, became kind of obsolete. Then we have stable coins, which is basically tokenization of currency. So in that case, it's not the security, it's currency. We can have some other asset-backed tokens like tokenized gold, tokenized oil, something like that. So in that case, the token represents the ownership right for an asset. And technically, from the legal perspective, the token is no different from a like paper claim for an asset. So it's just another form of the claim. So instead of paper, it's like digital, and this digital can be managed on the blockchain, so through cryptography and through private keys, and that allows automation of another level. That's the main benefit. Okay.
Yes.
Mohammed, please tell us a little bit about which markets are the most lucrative for tokenization. I mean, which jurisdictions like you did working on, and maybe which companies you see tokenizing their stocks, and yeah, maybe you can describe the whole process.
Sure. Now, if you look at the jurisdictions, number one, the tokenization industry, especially the security token, is a very new industry. So we're talking about 3 years. So there is still, a lot of things to be done there. The jurisdictions, the good thing is when we started like more than about 18 months ago, the concept of security token was not very or easily accepted because people were worried from a regulatory component, from where the regulators look at it, especially with the ICOs having some issues in certain jurisdictions and the confusion between what is constitute an investment or a security and what is not. Now, as we stand today, lots of jurisdictions around the world have released regulations and laws to define the security token offering or digital assets. Now, just to differentiate a little bit, regulators do not like the term token. So that's what we have noticed. And they refer to security token as a digital asset. To me, digital asset is a bigger asset class, and security token is a subset of digital asset. But regardless of the distinction, the regulators around the world are introducing regulations. UAE, beginning of November, introduced the security token law that define what can be a security token, and they're mainly focusing that a security token can represent an equity or a debt. They're also defining the commodity, token that you described, Pavel, like, a token that represent a commodity, a gold, or any type of commodity. And also the loyalty program tokens or utility tokens, basically. So the regulators are coming up with the definition, and these things are, because of the early stage of the industry, you will see variations on that. So that's from, overall. Now, where are the best jurisdictions? Difficult. We operate everywhere, basically. I mean, when we get a client, we evaluate different jurisdictions and we advise based on many factors. We're seeing very good adoption in Europe. Germany has a good, reasonable regulation. It's not a straightforward thing, so there is a work that needs to be done. Switzerland, of course, has already been ahead of the game in many areas. Utility token, of course, is very strong in the Swiss regulation, but also the introduction of the security token. You have now places like Cyprus. They have an accelerated approval program for security token. And there is just want to highlight a bit of a distinction on the regulation. Most of the times when you create a token that represents an equity, for example, in a private company, and if you're offering that token for an investment to private investors, you don't need to get an approval. So that's a concept. Sometimes you need to get an exception. Most of the time, you don't need to do anything. Now, you need to get an approval if you want to go to retail investors. Like during the ICOs, when they were raising money from the public, that activity requires approval. So if I create a company in UAE or in Europe, and I create equity that represent or token that represent shares, I can sell the token to private investors on a one-on-one negotiation, like most of the startups are currently doing. So that makes it easily available in many jurisdictions. The active ones, again, are Europe, and especially the Germany, Switzerland. Luxembourg also has good regulation. Monaco is coming up with a very good set of regulation. They want to become a hub for tokenization. Cyprus, are just now recently, they have a new set of regulation. US is already ahead of the game, but again, US has its own complexity. But literally all around the world, Asia as well, Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, you have different variations and different views how the regulators look at it. So you pick according to the structure you have, the targeted investors you're looking to achieve.
Okay, we have a few questions like if the asset is income producing, like who will decide how the income is used? Like token holders, board of directors, or some smart contract? I guess it's a very frequent question.
How the income, if the asset is income producing, like like a dividend, for example, is that what they mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, see, okay, the security token is a bit less fun, less exciting than utility token. So, at the end of the day, you look at a company and you could decide a token is an equity, and you do the technical and legal paperwork. Most of the work, by the way, is a legal aspect. So we define with the lawyers the legal requirements. So the token has a representation of an equity. Now, if that company is distributing dividend, the dividend in majority of the cases right now are being distributed in the normal way that the companies, through cash, fiat transfer. Now, there is a promise that the token itself, once I have a token that represents equity in a company that, let's say, represent 10% of a company, and the company is giving dividend, that the dividend can be distributed to, it comes directly to my wallet. And in this case, usually you will use a stable coin to do that dividend distribution. Who decides, this is a private offering usually, so the company will make that decision. And most of the time, so when you read the private placement memorandum and the investment material, you will have to, understand how the dividend distribution policy, as any normal investment on the dividend distribution. There are talks in the industry to create that mechanism. It's still not there. So right now, the decision on who is going to distribute, how's the dividend, will be with the board of the company, with the management. They might have it certain rights with the shareholders, and they go through the normal voting like what you do in the normal company. The benefit of the tokenization is eventually, maybe within this year or the next few years, lots of these things will be automated. The possibility to create a voting mechanism where the shareholders decide on the dividends, automatic distribution of dividends will become more reality. So these are the things that we're seeing to come to the industry. Now, the general partners, of course, will be in the fund, for example. Yes, some projects have coded the dividend distribution to the smart contract to make it automated, but it's still not a very common use of it as of now. So I can't go through the questions and answer them.
Yeah, I think that so many questions, basically. Like, let's try to answer some of them and then continue.
All right. So about the projects, I can come to that. Now, currently, we're doing, in a previous question you asked about the industry, most of the industries that we see that succeed in raising money with the token is real estate. So real estate is becoming one of the very interesting projects. We're currently closing one real estate development in Dubai. So about $17 million of fund that has been raised from private investors. So this is not a public offering. It doesn't go into the wider market. So it's still similar to the current method of fundraising. And then the only thing is, once we finalize the investment, we also create a token that represents the investors' ownership or dividend distribution. Some of the projects, they don't offer an equity, but they offer a revenue share, which is still considered a security. So it depends on how do you evaluate the token. As in this case, particularly, you look at the business. So the token value is not, is not restricted to the network use. It is related to the company. So if a token is an equity, so you can, for example, look into the tokens that are listed today, such as Spice VC, Blockchain Capital, and some of these other, like these are funds. The token represent the LP interest in the fund. The valuation of it is related to the fund performance. That's one angle. But also it's similar to any public market, to the sentiment and how the people view it. The valuation of the security tokens, it does not fluctuate very high like the utility tokens, for example. And it does go up and down. What we have seen in 2020, there were about 30 tokens got listed. So the token issued, let's say in 2019, most of them were in the US. The US requires that if a token is, or any investment is given to an American investor, that you have to have 1 year lockup. So for 1 year, the tokens were not listed in any exchange, and they were listed in 2020. And what happened during that period in 2020, the appreciation of the token, some of them went almost 600% from the beginning, like March, April till end of the year. And some of them, of course, dropped in value. So the same behavior like any, I would say, like a public market. It behaves more like the public equity market than what you see in the utility token market, where the fluctuation is very high. Some of the tokens, now how are they backed by a physical. So this is mostly, legal work. So let's say if you create a token that is backed by gold, so you have to make a decision. For example, either you maintain a physical reserve of gold in a trusted environment. Dubai has DMCC, which is a free zone specialized for commodities. You can store it. With let's say with a custodian who maintain the physical gold, for example, and then they give you a certificate that this gold is there and this is the value of it or the amount of gold. And basically, when the token is created, a smart contract will be designed to create a link to the documents, the legal documents. Most of the time, there will be an off-chain link. So you will have a link to the documents of the blockchain that link the token to a document that represent an ownership in a physically in a store. If it is a real estate, that requires that the real estate regulators, like in UAE, for example, we have in Dubai, the Dubai Lands Department and RERA, the regulatory authority. In 2019, they announced they accept fractional ownership up to 2,000 names in a title deed. So you have to create the link between the token, the investment documents, and the title deed and the regulators. As of today, that cycle is not fully complete because part of it is in the blockchain, part of it is off-chain. What we believe strongly that within the next 1 or 2 or 3 years, you will see that the whole set of material, the whole cycle is on-chain, and the regulators will start to accept the smart contract as a legal tender. Today is a mix of smart contract referring to a legal document that refers to a record with the company. We are seeing in certain jurisdictions, like in Liechtenstein, for example, you could create a company without shares. Delaware has that concept as well. So what will happen in the next few years, you will see that jurisdictions around the world accept the token as the final legal tender, that you don't need to create the set of documents. Today, we maintain the set of documents and the token, and we create a reference between them. I see a hand raised by Omar. Should I?
Yes,
Hello.
hi.
Hello.
This is Omar Bisaf.
Hi, Omar.
Yes, hi. So you have just raised the matter of Dubai, when the ownership can be divided into 200 participants or 200 owners, co-owners, let's say.
Yeah, it is 2,000 right now.
2,000, I mean, yeah. So the idea that there's maybe another idea. So I was working on it, and it's I made all the studies related to this. It's that a private company, private shareholder company, private joint stock company, which owns the land. So that now in the UAE, the company law said the new amendment of the company's law, there is no maximum number of shareholders in the private joint stock company. So if this private joint stock company owns the land, there's no more problem. So we can overpass this barrier.
Well, that's what's currently the crowdfunding concept of real estate. So, you have companies that does, it's not tokenization, and there is a blurry line between crowdfunding and tokenization. So they create an SPV, whether a private joint stock or any SPV that owns the land, and then they sell shares of that company to, let's say, 10,000, for example. I know there is a limit. I don't know what the number of shareholders, but regardless, let's say a big number of shareholders, you're still having the issue that the equity holder in that private stock company, for them to liquidate their ownership, they have to sell their shares to you, to the company. So, the token is promising that the token holder has an independent right from the company, from the issuer, to, once the token is listed, to exit. So today, if I own equity in your company that owns the real estate, my ownership in the real estate is indirect, which is what is happening right now. Most of the tokenization and crowdfunding is being done like that, because from a regulatory structuring is much easier and much smoother. Even in Dubai, although they have the token, it's not a tokenization, is fractional ownership. Implementation is slightly different. So yes, most of the people company that owns the real estate and sell the share in the company. Slightly different. It's a step in between. Now, if you have the 2,000 people owning the equity, their names in the title deed, the idea is basically having a mechanism that allow an individual person to exit without having to, sell the shares to the private company, and having more freedom in the utilization of the token. However, reality is what you're saying is this is how most of the real estate tokenization is happening right now. So, but again, I mean, things will keep improving. So a question about, can anyone have access to the tokens? Not really. I mean, these are security tokens. So a person who will have an ownership of the token, they have to go through the KYC, AML, and sometimes an accredited investor verification. So let's say if a token represents an equity in a company, you cannot have the token owned by anyone unless if they have done the KYC. So it can't be owned by anyone that jurisdictions allow, and after they have done the KYC and AML procedure. So that is very important step in the security token. And it's a concept that many providers call it the whitelisting. So if you go to any security token platform or an exchange like T0, for example, you have to register, you have to do the KYC, you have to be whitelisted. And even after that, some of these token offering might not be applied to you. So then, if the jurisdiction of that issuance does not allow your residency or citizenship or whatever restrictions, or it needs a qualified investor and a proof that you are a qualified investor. So these things have to be achieved before you can buy and trade the token. And that, of course, limits the tradability and the liquidity in the market. Of course, non-regulation like in the utility tokens create higher liquidity, but for the promise that this tokenization will unlock over $500 trillion worth of asset, that needs to be done with the proper procedure of the KYC, AML, and any other requirements that a certain jurisdiction will have. So, question about Sharia, consider tokenization.
Yeah.
It's relevant. A token, as Pavel mentioned earlier, is a method of registering. So, if let's say I have 1 million token represent 1 million shares in the company, I mean, the shares can be registered in an Excel file and, the traditional materials. Now I'm adding a token which will give me benefit in terms of tradability once they are listed and other benefits. So if the underlying asset is Sharia compliant, then it is a Sharia. The token itself is not the instrument yet. I mean, of course, the market is moving to mix, for example, DeFi with security tokens, how to utilize different, the benefits of the blockchain. And if the token becomes an instrument, then you have to apply the financial policies to it and see if it is a Sharia compliant. Today, it is just a record of representing an underlying asset, an equity, a cash flow, real estate. So if it represents something that is not Sharia compliant, then it is not. But it's relevant in that front.
Okay. Yeah, it's really interesting to know maybe some examples of companies that have done the STO or exchanges that are listing the tokens, yeah, and the lockup period already has expired. So I know that there was the first STO was done by Brooke Pierce approximately 2017 in Singapore for his blockchain fund. But since then, I've heard no news regarding what's next. So they've done it through SPV. Yeah, I think many companies follow the same path. So maybe provide us some examples, like with, yeah, at least where some activity?
Yeah, most, okay, the majority of the security tokens are not public. So that creates an issue because very few are listed right now. So about 30 tokens or so, you know, and the majority of them are listed in T0, which is, let's say, an exchange, quote unquote. I mean, it's not, you know, full exchange, but anyway, it's an exchange for tokens in the US. That has the majority of the listings. And the T0 is a secondary trading. So what it means is this is the place where after the tokens are sold, then the issuer, the company that issued the token, will list it there for trading. Now you have different type of exchanges that are doing primary issuance. So you could go directly to that exchange to buy the token from the issuer directly, like a company like Fusang in Singapore and Black Manta, which is licensed in Germany. And you know, some of them offer primary issuance only, and some of them do primary and secondary issuance. The mechanism of it is basically majority of the work for security token is legal work. So, and depends on the jurisdictions. And I don't know how, I don't want to complicate the matter. Some jurisdictions give you a concept of a native token. So you can create a company and the shares can be created as token. So the legal work is less. Majority of them, they do what we call a two-tier structure. So you create a company, the normal way of doing it, and then you create a token and you build up a legal material and the token coding that will allow you to link it to them. How do you link to the real estate? As Omar mentioned, most of the real estate token issuing that we have seen, they're doing that approach. So they create an SPV, they tokenize the SPV owns the property. Now, the trend is to move where the token can directly represent, like in the question here, a square foot of a piece of land. What you require is the real estate regulatory in that jurisdiction will approve to have your name, you know, multiple names in the title deed. So currently, many of these jurisdictions still have a limitation because of the current technology they're using. It's very difficult to have a huge number of owners directly in the title deed. So some of them, I believe in Germany is already there. Dubai has introduced the law. It hasn't been used, by the way. So we have regulations. It is still not yet in effect because there are no examples as of now, but this is happening. 2021, we are aware of at least in UAE of 6 real estate projects that are gonna tokenize. And they want to approach the title deed representation. So they want to bypass creating an SPV. So they want the real estate asset ownership is directly linked to the token. The link itself is basically, again, it's a creation of legal material that can be placed in a storage and you link to them. And now there is a attempt and very good examples of the smart contracts being created to represent part of the contract, of the real estate contract, so that the rights of the ownership is embedded in the smart contract. Now, most of the jurisdictions that I'm aware of do not yet accept the smart contract as a legal tender. So you create that and you also have to create a paper contract as of today. Hopefully within a year, everything will be on chain and the contract, the full contract of ownership will be in the smart contract. Can we see websites? Yes, absolutely. I can share with you guys. Now, what we do, for example, most of the projects, when we create the token, we already have the investor. So it's not something that we market or advertise for it. We just create the link for it. That's the trend with what we do. Most of the token issuance in the market are done by private issuing, and majority are done by banks. Now, the idea is you know, for it to go to the public and become more available. I can recommend that you guys look into one of our partners, a company called Black Manta. They have, you know, a couple of projects listed. From our contracts, I will share my email and I will be more than happy to share any specific information for the projects that we are working with. And we do help with the listing. Yes, we have. So we as a company, the objective here is not to market ourselves, but we are an independent consultancy. We don't have any technology. So we work with multiple exchanges, and we do help, even if the token is created and investment is raised, we help in the listing, we help in the fundraising. So whatever is needed from the ecosystem, we work with our clients. For your information, there are today more than 50 exchanges licensed around the world. Majority, of course, in the US, but there is a good number of exchanges in different jurisdictions. Some of them very specialized, some of them very broad. So there is like real estate focus, such as DJ Share, for example, out of Denmark, and other ones. So you see variations of things. You will not have a notice of the security token till more and more tokens are listed. Today, roughly about 30 tokens are listed and traded, and you can look at them. Most of them are in T0. But few that are listed in Merge, for example, the exchange of Seychelles is listing already security tokens. Volumes of trading are very low. To give you an idea on the trading, the 30 tokens have a market cap of about $500 million. They fluctuate between 350 or 400 to 500 million. There is a trading currently as of December was about $3 million per month. So it's a very small, a very limited, but you know, it's building up, and that's where the things are going. So it is impossible. How can we? Okay, it's similar to an accounting transaction. So if you make an error in the accounting transaction, you don't delete the transaction, you reverse it. So many of these errors can be fixed by creating, you know, a reverse transaction. Now, this subject is very huge. There's a question about the blockchain is immutable, so you cannot delete the data. And of course, there are so many issues in that regards. And there are some blockchain protocols are being created specifically to handle security tokens. So Polymath is coming with Polymesh, and few others are trying to focus mostly in the security token platform. So they create the ability to reverse the transaction if possible. But most of currently, let's say if you're going to do it in Ethereum, you do a reverse of the transaction. But the history is there. Like any government required that the history of the shares issued is maintained. Even for the certificates that got canceled, you have to maintain it. So it's a very similar aspect. So yeah, I don't know if there is any.
Yeah, for the correction is, yeah, you explained quite well. So you don't need to do a deletion, if anything.
Yeah, which is needed by governments anyway. Today, if you have a normal company with a normal, you know, paper register, you cannot delete. You just, you cancel a certificate, you issue another one. So it's a similar thing. Now, of course, it's a very early stage for the industry, but the growth 2020 was very good for this industry. One of the things you mentioned, Pavel, people are now willing to have Zoom calls. So even for us, we are now, which has been a very blessing. I mean, in a way that we can talk to investors all over the world and they accept having a Zoom call. Everything is online. And actually people started to pay attention to digital assets, security token, and of course the whole crypto is benefiting. People are looking into how things will be more automated. Security tokens will allow cross-border trading, and that's a huge benefit. Again, by cross-border, you still have to apply regulation, but it is much less costly and easier to do than private companies. So a company in UAE can create a token, and the token can be traded in Europe and US and Asia while complying with all the regulations. So that's the promise of the security token, and it is already happening.
Okay, there was a question from Artem regarding how to set up real estate tokenization, and I would simplify this question can you recommend some scheme when you step by step? So these guys open accounts here, these guys create a registry that supports like fractional ownership. This company allows you to list, and maybe super simplified, but some kind of path.
Yeah. So the way we look at it, for example, we look at the project, as any normal investment, regardless of the tokenization and where the project is. So if it is in Europe, which will be slightly easier, again, still most of the cases will be to create an SPV. The SPV could be in Switzerland, in Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg, or even in an offshore jurisdiction like Cayman, for example. And you create the company that owns the property, and then you create the shares in that company, and then you use a platform to have a linkage between, you create tokens that, link to that share ownership. So you have to do the normal paperwork of the, subscription agreements, the share register, the shareholder agreement, and of course the normal company registration. And then you have in the private placement, specifically where you mentioned that there will be a token representing that equity, and you create the token. If it is a real estate, we would, when we advise our clients, we will pick one of the real estate specialized token platforms. One of them, you guys can look into it, DG Share, for example, and there are a few others, Solid Block and other platforms. Again, depends on the jurisdiction, depends on the target investors. These platforms will have, like, for example, most of the smart contract required to represent the real estate ownership is already coded, which is very important because you minimize the risk of coding, writing a smart contract from scratch and get into the risk of having an issue if anything goes wrong. So these platforms will do that. They can give you additional services. If we're talking about fractional ownership, so you have a bigger number of owners, so they give you management of these owners, either cap table, that will create, the management of it. The actual fractionalization has to be linked. Now, if the jurisdiction does not allow a big number of owners in the title deed, you have to create an SPV. But even SPVs in most jurisdictions has a number of shareholders that is limited. So you select the one that can give you the target number of shareholders. If a jurisdiction allows you to create the ownership in the title deed, and you can have, as I mentioned in Dubai, you can put up to 2,000. Now, even that, you have to go submit your case to the authority. You have to explain to them what you're trying to do, and they might not accept it. If they agree, then they will allow you to create a title deed with 2,000. And in this case, you can bypass the creation of an SPV, and you create a smart contract that reflect a legal agreement that represent that ownership. And you could decide if that is just an ownership, if they get access to the, let's say, if that piece of property has income generating, will the token also give them access to the dividend or not? That number one has to be developed in the legal documents, and then some of it can be programmed, let's say, in the smart contract to create that link. And after the creation, after the issuance, it is better to do that through a platform, because you can have the ongoing management of the shareholders through the platform. If not, then you are required to maintain your, in addition to the tokens, you have to maintain your register to ensure that everything is updated. Because as I said, most of the governments right now will not recognize the token. So you have to maintain your traditional set of documents. And slowly, I hope within the next 1 or 2 years, we will see more jurisdictions accept the token as a native legal tender. So it's lots of paperwork and lots of legal material, and then the creation of a smart contract to represent that. It's simple, but I don't know how to simplify that. But that's what things happening. What we are seeing, for example, today, we're seeing some blockchain creating a very specialized smart contracts that embed some of the legal terms of a contract that represent ownership of a real estate and getting it approved by a jurisdiction. So then the jurisdiction will say this token is, if there is a dispute, you can look into that token as a legal document. Today, you still have to maintain your paperwork. Don't know if that's helping or not.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, at this moment of time, it's enough. We'll see from the questions.
For a startup, you just create an SPV, whatever. You have so many options. If it's in UAE, for example, ADJ, Abu Dhabi Global Market, there's a question, there's a startup, how to do it. I mean, it's actually relatively simple. So it's similar to what you will do today. You create an SPV, you define your cap table, your capital structure, whether you want to give 10% or 50%, whether you want to do a direct equity or a convertible note or any method of fundraising. Prepare all your legal material, and then you consult with a lawyer to ensure that you could actually create a token that represent that offering. So usually for a startup, you will do a convertible note. You could create a token that represent the convertible note. And then you have to work with the token issuing platform or a consultancy company like us to create that mechanism in the smart contract so that it will reflect the convertible note. And once that conversion happens, there are different mechanical approaches, whether you create a new token that represents equity, or the smart contract itself can allow you to convert that current token from a convertible note to an equity. So it's relatively simple. You just need to go to a jurisdiction that will have no problem with the token. And there are many jurisdictions. UAE, you will go to ADGM, for example. They accept creation of security token and utility tokens. In Europe, you have more options. You could do Cayman, you could do US, and then the lawyers will draft the PPM that reflect that structure.
Okay. Like
yeah, I think I'll share. Sorry, I'll put my email here if anybody wants to have questions about anything related to us, if you don't mind, so they can contact me. There was a question about us not being, we don't have a good, what do you call it? I don't know how to do it, everybody. Media or PR. I mean, we are very focused. Our projects are very focused projects. So we have a project that has a vaccine candidate, for example. So the investor base is a very small subset. It's not for a public offering. We have a very detailed or very deep technology projects. So as of now, what we are doing is mostly focusing on very niche projects with a very focused investors. And these investors are traditional investors. Most of them haven't heard of security token. So we have to do a bit of an education to make them come in a public domain right now, because the market is still small. We're hoping by end of the year we will have some sort of a public platform that will allow us to go more to the market.
Do you plan to launch your own STO platform? Just, yeah.
Do we issue? No, we are an independent. We will not have a technology. We will not. So we work with multiple technology providers. So the clients come to us. We can tell them what is the best technology for them. If I have anything, I will push mine. So again, there are lots of the issue with the security tokens. Some people tell me, for example, there are not enough exchanges. To me, there are more exchanges than what the market can process right now. You have more than 50 licenses. You have lots of technology providers. So the clients gets, they are not sure what are the differences. So we are an independent consultant. We will not have any direct offering. We will always work through partners. Even if we do primary assurance, secondary assurance, it will always be through our network of partners.
Okay, and which industries do you think you'll be the first to jump into the game? If you can make like a list.
I hope the blockchain and DeFi, to be honest. I mean, to me, it makes more sense because they are already in the industry. However, most of the skeptics about security tokens are the crypto community, unfortunately. What we are seeing are two segments. The banks are issuing tokenized bonds. Almost more the major banks in 2020, they have over, the ones I know, more than $50 billion worth of bonds that were created through a security token structure.
Mm-hmm.
But these are offered to the private network of the bank. The second one is real estate. I see real estate is you know, jumping into this, and it makes sense in many jurisdictions. So I think, to answer you, the real estate would be the main industry that benefits from this.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. The one more question that I would ask is, like, there are some like thoughts circulating that tokenization will open up not just like digitization of existing processes, like when the token represents existing asset, but it will create a separate asset on its own. So like when the token itself has all the rules embedded into it and is kind of a new type of an instrument, like the options in futures, etc. So something new that may kind of, we see partial like movement in governance tokens that do not allow you to manage ownership or dividend stream, but kind of allow you to govern the project. So kind of fractionalizing the whole ownership concept. Just maybe you have some, you know, ideas of the future of this process. What kind of unexpected consequences can appear?
So number one, okay, the regulation is good and bad, unfortunately. Of course, having, let's say, in the DeFi, because of you know, no regulation, so it's easy to innovate, to create anything within that industry. Now, security token is regulated by the existing security laws in every jurisdiction. So when you create something as an investment or a representation of an asset, you have to be very careful. Now, what I believe is happening already, and hopefully within a year or two we'll see it, as I said earlier, to have the token as the legal tender. So we want to create tokens that by themselves have all the legal agreements, the shareholder agreement, the articles of the company,
yep,
in the blockchain. And there are examples already happening, and some jurisdictions, Switzerland, some of the cantons are approving some of these tokens. In UAE, there is already an initiative under a sandbox, you know, to test the regulatory component. So step one, to have the smart contract representing the legal documents. So I don't need to have, you know, the shareholder agreement, subscription, PPM, and all of that. It all becomes in the blockchain as not as a document scanned and you know, as an image, but as a coded contract. So this will change a lot of things. And I think this will be, we will see it in the next 3 years. You know, they're already, from a technology, there are lots of blockchain protocols are working on this. Now it comes to the jurisdiction to accept it. Why, from a legal perspective, is a challenge, because there are so many standards and the regulators cannot deal with every different technology. So standardization and the security token is critical. Of course, there are a few already existing standards, but it needs to either converge or one or two or three of them become dominant. So regulators will be able to do that. Then there is a concept that was mentioned by Carlos Domingo, the CEO of Securitize. You could look it up. He called it HiFi, the hybrid finance. So basically bringing the DeFi into the security token. Now, the issue with that is that there is a component in security token, the KYC AML is centralized. So the idea is to have one part as a centralized. So you have to do the KYC and AML when you do a security token. So that is a centralized function. Then the tradability can become in the decentralized exchange. How will that work? You know, maintaining the requirement of different jurisdictions. That is something that we believe is going to happen. There is already an example of a small company in the US, Corzio, private company that listed their token in Seychelles. So the tokens are traded in Seychelles exchange globally. So anybody can buy a token from there. That represent an ownership of a private company in the US. So you're seeing examples of cross-border listing, cross-border transactions. Is just going through the detail of it. So I believe the token being a legal tender is step one. To the maybe mixing the DeFi, the different aspect, governance, even utility token. Some project we're looking into, it makes sense to have a utility and a security token. How would they work together? So there is a level of complexity. There is a thin line in the regulation that we have to be careful about. But these things will happen. And I think the DeFi will play, especially from the trading, decentralized trading of security tokens will become a major thing in the next couple of years that are coming.
Okay, good. Okay, our time is almost up. So if we don't have any more questions, then I would thank everyone for joining. This topic is indeed really interesting because it allows like democratization of investment in the I hope medium term in a few years, and it will allow definitely tectonical changes in technology, because right now it's just this stone age, I would say. So you need to do a lot of manual actions, etc. So investor interest toward tokenization will drive demand for digital notary services, for digital like brokerage, for KYC and AML procedures that are not like ancient and like work behind the scenes, and which eventually will eliminate a lot of burden that currently sit on banks and other organizations to do stuff that could be done automatically. So I guess not just one industry will be transformed, but many. So we personally supply software components to that. We develop these custom solutions, standard solutions, and we see already the demand is like waking up for all these components, starting from digital notary to like digital deal making, etc. So yeah, Mohammed, I'll let you do some like closing remarks, and yeah, we'll be done for today.
All right, thank you, Pavel. I mean, just as a last thing, yes, the industry is changing. There are new players, such as the share registrar, for example, becoming blockchain. So you have companies now that are approved by certain governments, like in Germany. They maintain the record in the blockchain. You have new players coming to the market. The concept of broker will change because, as we all know, the blockchain brings this peer-to-peer interaction that reduce the need for intermediaries. So lots of things are coming. What does it mean? How will it end up? Again, it's still at the early stage. However, the good important thing, security token is now happening. It's still like not a massive like the other part of the blockchain industry, but it's happening. The growth is very good, 300, 400% per month in terms of the fundraise, in terms of new tokens issued. You don't see a lot of it because very few of them are listed. That's the unfortunate thing. But in the next 1 or 2 years, you will see more, and then you'll see more trading of these security tokens, and will become much more visible to the market. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I've shared my email. Anybody wants any details, I'm more than happy to discuss. Thank you.
And thanks participants for participation, for the questions. Yeah, definitely we see interest. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.